would affect the other things we're doing, and also what kind of benefits that we would get. Wouldn't it be great to have some advice on how to find the right ones for your situation? I love the term best practice, right? Because, I mean, what the hell does that mean? There's good ones, there's bad ones, there's ones that work in this context and in another. It's like we have like a practice Olympics where we can pick the number one. Right? It's all about context, isn't it? And about your organisation, your stakeholders. So, as you get these things, you're going to tailor them to meet your needs. And when you want examples, you want my examples. Examples from my domain, examples from my company. Not necessarily the ones you find in the textbook or something like that. You want your templates with your logos and fonts and things. You also want to capture the stuff you found works. You know, this is how we learn. And it'd be great, we need to start to capture those experiences in a way that we can then share with our peers. Practices don't actually come from methodologists, they come from practitioners. Right? Someone has to do it first. We need to get out of that catch-22 situation where I can't do this because no one's written down how to do it yet. You know, you have to do it first. Good practices come from practitioners. You can then start to collect them, you share them. Right? And now we're in the age of communities and social networking. They spread all by themselves. Good stuff will spread from team to team. But wouldn't it be good if we could actually get what they're really doing? Because usually when someone's got a good practice, they're not actually doing what it says, are they? They've tuned it. It's been too hard. So you pick it up and you have to make all the same mistakes again. So we need to tune them, share them with peers. And this is what it's all about. If we want to do that, and we want to take practices from all the different areas of the industry, from people like, you know, PMI, project management practices, you've got the business analyst body of knowledge, analyst practices, you've got the agile community, you've got all these places where we could get good stuff. We need a way to bring it all together. So this is where the kernel comes in. We need some common ground. When we have different communities and you start talking to them, often it's impossible to understand what they're saying, isn't it? You meet the information engineer from the website and they're talking one language and you're talking another language. And it's very difficult to reconcile them. If someone says they're doing some analysis, what are they doing? I've no idea. It could be systems analysis, business analysis. It could be about the structure of the software system or the requirements. How do we bring these things together? So you see organisations, people arguing, have an argument, they think they have a different opinion. They're just using different words for the same thing. And somewhere else, there are two guys who think they've reached agreement about what they're going to do, and they haven't. Because when Paul says release, he means something completely different to me. You know? So we need to get that common ground to bring our communities, our teams, and importantly, the practices together. Okay, what exactly are these things? And Brian will talk a bit more about this with his example, I believe. Okay, so that common ground is what we need. And the common ground needs to be small. We're not, in SEMAT, we are not trying to define all the terms in software engineering. Right? We just want to define the common ones that allow all these communities to come together. I was doing some, you know, you can get the IS, there's a testing institute, I can never get the letters the right way around, ISTQB, maybe, some combination. They have a glossary, and it's like 700 items, most of which are defined in terms of other items which refer back to the first one. Right? And then you've got your project manager, they have one, and these people, they all have these different things. And it's okay, but there's nothing to join them together. And that's what we want to try and do with the kernel, small set of things. And if we can get that, it has many uses. It has social uses, just allowing us to all be talking the same language. When I say increment, you mean the same. When I say release, it means the same thing. When I say project, it means the same thing, for example. But also it can help us with processing things like building and analysing our way of working. Okay, have a reference model that we can use to analyse all the different things teams are doing, find those good practices and start to share them. It can help us to run our projects, run our teams, decide what we should do next, where are we going. And it can help us avoid problems. Right? Maybe we can get the practices to help us avoid problems rather than the ones we need a little bit later when we've run into that particular issue. So I've got a few slides on each of these. So when we're talking the same language, The first one, have you heard this? There's a famous song, isn't it? You say tomato, I say tomato. I can't even do it myself now. But Americans and English, two countries separated by a common language. Right? But it is English, as I keep telling them. That is the language. Just because they can't spell, we forbid them that. Right? But we use the same words to mean different things, perhaps in the same way. And the second one, this is a Groucho Marx quote. It's slightly relevant, it's quite funny. Time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like bananas. Right? Using the same words, but what exactly do they mean? Right? Because fruit flies is not the same. But, so if we can get people talking the same language, have a small reference model to align these things, we can just improve communication in our organisations. And, as I said before, it will allow us to understand how our communities interact and how our practices interact. Okay, so we can say, well, what you do in your information modelling over here, that's exactly the same as this bit of my analysis model. Let's make friends about it and stop fighting. So that's one part of it, and that can have in organisations with mergers, acquisitions, that can have a huge benefit. Another one though is this to actually help us build and analyse our methods and our ways of working. So the kernel has in it a number of things that are the essentials of software development. Now the working group that's been looking at this, we've been going through trying to say what are the things that, regardless of your business domain, your technology, whether you're safety critical, web application, what are the things that everyone's got to deal with? Right? And are there any? So, and we want to look at it from a number of perspectives. One is the things that we're going to have to progress, things we're going to have to monitor, control, keep an eye on, things that every software engineering endeavour is going to have to handle. It's also useful to understand the competencies and skills that you would need to do software engineering. And finally, it's useful to have a sort of map of the territory to order things and see that. So the map of the territory gives you basically they're placeholders for things you're going to have to do. You are going to have to specify the system that you're going to build. You are going to have to shape it. You're going to have to implement some software. You're going to have to test. Okay, so this gives us one view of the extent of what software engineering means. Okay, another one is the competencies. We need development competency, we need testing competency, we need analytical competency, we need to understand our stakeholders and customers. Okay, not all of this is finalised yet. This is the idea: is finding the right names, and things takes time. The thing we've done most work on, and the most important element, is the things we're going to progress. Okay, if you're doing software engineering, we would assert that there will be an opportunity. There is some value, some change, something that you hope to achieve via your software. And it's very important you understand what that opportunity is, what's the window of opportunity, what's the value you're looking to achieve. There will be some stakeholders. Even if you're just building something for yourself, you can be your own stakeholder, can't you? Okay, there's going to be some people affected by your software. There will be some requirements. There will be some things that the system has to do. Okay. We did toy, you've played around with words a lot. What are the most acceptable words? The word requirement went out of fashion a bit about 2 years ago. But now the Agile community has come round, so it's okay. What we found was we couldn't talk about SEMAT without saying, what are the requirements all the time? What do people want to get out of this? The thing we're going to build is a software system. There will be a team. There is some work to do. And there will be our way of working, which will be based on our method and our practices. So this gives us things we need to move forward. So each of them, I'll come to that in a minute. Got my order. So the kernel it doesn't have any instructions in it. It doesn't tell you how to form a team. It doesn't tell you how many people to have in your team. It doesn't tell you what document you should produce to identify who's in your team. That would all be practice specific. Okay, there's many different practices for that. It doesn't tell you how to write your requirements. It doesn't tell you whether to use use cases or user stories. Those would be practices. But it gives us that frame of reference, an empty way of working, and we can add those practice-specific elements, the concrete stuff, and plug them in to create a way of working. Okay, so it gives us the extent, and then we can look at things, as you'll see, like coverage. So, what can you do with this kind of thing? These are a couple of examples from people I've worked with over the years who've applied these ideas. This is a company in the financial sector. They created a project rule book, they're called Rule Financial, and I've trademarked that. Because they are a company who builds software for the finance industry. So people outsource to them. Right? Having a method would add over £5 million to their purchase price. Sounds like worth having. It also increases customer confidence. But what you find is they couldn't have one size fits all. Right? So what they did is they selected some practices to build on the kernel. Some of them were standard, some of them are their own. And from them they actually assembled two different methods. One is a very lightweight, agile, what we call the exploratory method. It's limited to small teams, working very closely with the customers. Okay? And contractually, from their point of view, you can only do that kind of stuff time and materials, because there's too many unknowns. Now that's good, you don't lose money on time and materials, you don't make much though, your headroom is very limited.